I would like to introduce our speaker, Rosalinde Willson, who is part of the Cowles County Master Gardeners. We are so glad that she's here today and talking about this. I'm kind of really excited about this because this is one of those topics I don't hear about very often, but has the potential. So I'm going to move my screen so everybody can see her and listen to her. And with that, you're all set.
Okay, great. All right, this presentation is on edible flowers. It's specifically to Western Washington, but most of these flowers come from nurseries, hopefully eco-friendly nurseries, and can be grown all over the US. So slide 1, please. Oh, that's going to be in the way. I'm in Western Washington, as I mentioned, that's where I am. You may be growing vegetables in your garden, in your flower beds. You may be growing orchard, fruit trees, all of these things providing you with blossoms that are edible. In your fields, you'll have things that are growing native, perhaps your field across the road or somewhere else. Of course, it goes without saying you're not going to eat anything that has been sprayed or treated or harvested from along the roadside. Please. Use your reputable online sites or books to identify a flower. We in America have gotten away from eating flowers because we do not find them in the grocery store. Therefore, we don't even consider them as being part of our diet. In Europe, on other continents, and even our forebears ate a lot of flowers. And because the flowers do have such a short shelf life, and we're not finding them in the grocery store, we have really gotten away from being able to even identify them, much less know what they taste like and how to use them. The sites that you're going to find online may or may not be reputable. You will find that many of them will harken back to the same article. Therefore, 2 or 3 different reference sites on the internet may, because they're using the same article, be telling you the same information. And if you do not consider the original article to be reliable, then you should continue checking and find some other sites. Any kind of a bibliography on an article is important. That gives you articles that you can go to help you to identify various flowers. Do not assume that because one part of a plant is edible, that all parts of that plant are also edible. As an example, look at the deadly nightshades that we have in our garden: tomatoes, potatoes, and peppers, all of which we eat the fruits of, but the blossoms are poisonous. The leaves and the stems are poisonous. We never think about that. So just because you find a plant that your reference tells you is edible does not mean that the blossom will also be edible. Please research in depth. Research, research, research. Now you're going to find that each person's body is different. Some of us have allergies, some not. If you're going to be eating flowers of any size, you may find that they have a considerable amount of pollen within them. Some of the flowers I'm going to mention it will be recommended that you remove the pistil and stamen from inside the flower. This pollen may trigger a hay fever attack. And of course, we all know when you're working with flowers, you have the potential for being in contact with wasps and bees. The most important thing is to remember that because a flower is edible, it is not necessarily palatable. Something that is edible is not necessarily going to taste good to your particular palate. You and I have different palates. So if I tell you something tastes good to me, that doesn't mean that you are going to enjoy it. Again, please research and then nibble in small amounts until you find out how your body is. Common edible flowers in your orchard. All of the fruit trees that we commonly grow have edible blossoms. They do, most of them have a small, minute amount of cyanide in them. That includes the flowers. However, research has shown that for a 150-pound person to be adversely affected by, let's say, apple seeds, you'd have to eat 1/4 pound, which is 200 seeds or 25 apple cores. So the small amount that you're going to find in the tiny little blossom is not something to even consider. We were taught as children not to eat the pits of the pitted fruits, and that is valid. It can take perhaps as little as 10 peach pits to kill a person. But again, the blossoms with that tiny mass, don't worry about it. We know that apple trees produce their blossoms in a cluster at the end of the branch, the one in the center being the largest apple in that group. It doesn't hurt for you to harvest one or more of the little apple blossoms around that center blossom. That is actually good for the tree. You're thinning it out. It's nutritious. It's fun to put on your salad. And you're going to find that most of these blossoms don't handle heat well and are wonderful in your salad or as a garnish. There are a few we'll come across that you can use in heated fruits. Berries, all of your berry bed fruits. Everything that you will find in our Pacific Northwest berry bushes is edible. All those blooms are edible, whether it's blueberries, huckleberries, currants, raspberries, any of those, even the lowly strawberry. Of course, if you harvest the blossom to eat, that means you will not receive fruit on that stem. But at least in my case, I have little wild strawberries growing all over my yard, and those flowers I do harvest, leaving my regular strawberry bed alone. Please. Please. We'll move on. Thank you. One more. Yeah, okay. Common edible flowers in your flower beds. Some people use alliums in their flower beds. By the way, these will be in alphabetical order, not in importance. Some people put alliums into their flower beds, some do not. I personally use a lot of chives as edgings in my borders. Anything that is in the allium family that you're likely to be growing in your yard is totally edible. You can snip off that blossom, take it in the house, and pull off the tiny little florets. They are pretty hardy. They can handle heat. You can use them to put on meat when you're roasting. You can use them in your salads, on your side dishes. Any of those are edible. You can crumble the petals across the food. You can blend them into some butter. You can even dry them for future use in the winter. Borage starts out with pink blossoms and turns into blue, so you have several color options there. Borage plants are very prolific, a lot of blossoms. They are tremendous for pulling in bumblebees and honeybees. The flower is firm enough that you can candy it or crystallize it, which is usually a 1 part sugar, 1 part water, which we used to call a simple syrup. Dip the blossoms in there, take them out, set them on a paper towel or on a rack, and you can crystallize them to use on your baked goods. Borage can be used in soup or sauce. You can use it as a filler in a vegetable dish. You can freeze them into ice cubes. They have a cucumber taste. Some people have a sensitivity to the borage plant because both the leaves and the stem are a little bit fuzzy. You can actually see that in the picture. And that fuzziness can be irritating to the skin. So be careful when you're harvesting your borage. I like to leave a few borage plants growing in the corner of the garden where they're out of the way. It will reseed, but it's not a problem. It's easy to pull out. Calendula comes in various shades of orange. I've never seen it in any color but orange. It is known as the poor man's saffron because it is a yellow dye. You can put it into rice dishes to add a little bit of color there. Spill it across your salads. It's considered antibacterial. You can use it to construct homemade salves using coconut oils. Anything that is antibacterial or anti-whatever generally has a tiny little bit of toxin in it, which is why it works as it does. But again, the toxins are not going to be sufficient for you to worry about them. Daisies. Many of our daisies are edible. There are daisies in your garden that are not what we consider to be the true daisy family. So always research any flower that resembles a daisy before you eat it. You're going to find English daisies out in your yard, oxeyes in your field. The Shasta is a hybrid between the two and is usually something that you start from seed. But those daisies, pull the little petals off and strew them across whatever your dish is that you're serving. They're really fun to mix in with other flowers. They have a slightly bitter taste. Daylilies. This one is great fun. This one you can eat the bud before it opens. We know it only lasts 1 day because it's called a daylily. You can stuff it, you can chop it. If you're going to use it before it opens, I like to go out in the morning with a hot beverage and grab one of those buds before they open, take it in, remove the green part at the bottom and chop it into your breakfast eggs. It's meaty and nutritious and it really has good flavor. If you want to stuff it, as you would do a cabbage roll. Just lay it on the counter. This is after the bloom has opened. Let's say it's noontime. Lay it on the counter, remove the pistils and the stamen, and put a teaspoon of whatever your favorite meat dish is, or maybe you want it to be sweet rather than savory. Pull the petals back together and give it a slight twist at the end. Stir fry, deep fat fry, do anything with it you like. Daylilies are really, really good. They're very, very edible. Impatiens, cultivated. There is an impatiens in this country that you will find in your literature. It's called jewelweed. That one you do not eat. The only impatiens you eat is the one that we get from the nurseries, the ones that we use in our beddings. That, of course, you're going to want to either raise from seed or get from an eco-friendly organic nursery. You don't want something that's been sprayed. Impatiens it's really quite good. You can drop it into drinks. It makes quite a statement to drop that pretty little orange petal into a clear drink, maybe with a little effervescence in there. It has a slightly sweet taste, and it's really fun to deal with. Nasturtiums, we all know, a little bit peppery. Personally, I don't find them tremendously palatable, but a lot of people love them. They come in so many colors, and they are so prolific, and they reseed. They'll come back next year, but they're not a problem, easy to pull up. You can top them off on vegetables. You can garnish your meats with them because they can handle a little bit of heat. They have a variety of minerals, antioxidants. They also are anti-inflammatory. Marigolds. Marigolds come in a different sizes and different types. The big, tall, 3-foot tall ones that are African marigolds generally are recommended not to eat, but the little short 6-inch ones that we buy all the time to put in our flower beds, the ones with multiple petals, the French marigolds are absolutely edible. They're quite strong flavored, again, because they're antimicrobial, so they have a very tiny bit of toxin in them. Not that you would worry about, but that would be the reason for them being bitter. Pull the little green part off the bottom. Don't use that. It also is bitter. Use the petals only if you're using the little French marigolds. If you want a marigold that is not as tart in flavor, the picture shows what's called the gem cultivars. They come in lemon and orange. They're single petaled and generally not available at the nursery. It's something you'd have to start from seed. They're not as popular because they're not as frilly and thick. Roses. All of our roses are considered safe, including the little wild roses, the rugosa roses. There are so many uses for roses. Roses are flavorful. They're nutritious. They make a great garnish. Put them on your salad. Dribble them across the top of a cold soup. Potpourri. You can muddle them into drinks. You can candy them, again, with a 1-to-1 sugar water. Use them in infusions. You can also make beads out of them or do rose water. In the olden days, the roses that were used at a funeral were taken home and made into beads. The beads were then made into a rosary, and your loved one accompanied you wherever you went. So there are a lot of uses for roses. If the rose petal has a green portion at the bottom, you want to just pinch that off. That part can be bitter. Violas. Pansies, Johnny jump ups. Our violets around here come in both purple and white, and there are a few yellow ones. There are lookalikes for the yellow, so be sure that what you're eating is actually a wild violet while you're out on your hike. Pansies and jump ups. The Johnny jump ups come back every year. Those are the little guys that come up in your gravel driveway, and they want to live. They're such sweet little flowers. They do have that sweet flavor. You can crystallize those again in the 1-to-1 solution. Use them on your baked goods. Drop them into drinks, freeze them into ice cubes, and they just keep coming back. There are many, many others. If we have time at the end of the presentation and you would like, we can get into some of those. Hominidal flowers. Oh, okay. In the cultivars of these flowers that you're purchasing from your nurseries, cultivars frequently include an outcross. And if they do that, it changes the genetic makeup of the blossom so that the plant may no longer be edible. In today's GMO culture, you have to be exceedingly careful. So anytime you are purchasing something that is not what we consider the original cultivar, research it. For instance, the daylily. We all know the old timey Stero de Oro daylilies, those brilliant orange ones, perfectly safe. But there are hundreds of cultivars now to that, and some of the new ones are not so safe to eat. So again, go back to either the old Stella de Oro or research the whatever variety that you are currently using. Vegetable garden. Again, these are in alphabetical order, not in order of importance. The alliums we already considered having in your flower beds, but we all have them in our vegetable garden. They're still just as edible as they were a few moments ago. Pull off that blossom, take it inside and remove the little florets. Even the elephant garlics, all of the garlics, and the Egyptian onions, the nodding onions, they're all edible. There are some out there called ornamental onions, and if you research those, you will find that almost all of those are also edible, even though they claim to be just ornamental. Beans, scarlet runners are your safe beans. A lot of beans that are called beans actually are from a different family. They come from another continent, and although they're a foot long or some other color, they are not safe to eat. Always research your beans. Scarlet runners are completely safe. They really make a statement on the plate. They make a terrific screen. That one is safe, so do go ahead and raise that one. But anything else you do want to research. Brassicas, anything in the Brassica family is edible. We already know that cauliflower and broccoli are a flower. And when it comes to things like bok choy and kale, radishes, if they happen to go to seed and you know they want to do so very quickly, those tiny little flowers are wonderful to deal with. Pick them by the handful. They don't have much of a flavor, so it's pretty subtle, but they really add a lot of punch to a dish. Garden peas. That's the sweet peas, snap peas, snow peas, English peas, any of those peas that we grow in the garden to eat. Do not eat the ornamental sweet pea flowers, the ones that come in the many colors. Those are poisonous. But I doubt you're going to have those in your vegetable garden to begin with. So any of the garden peas are going to be perfectly edible. They're sweet. The little tendril beneath the flower is also edible. The little flowers, the small leaves around the flowers are edible. They have lots of minerals, vitamins A and C, iron. So eat the shoots along with the flowers and the tendrils also. I plant extras just for eating the blossoms so that I don't affect my rows of peas that I grow for shelling. Summer squash, zucchinis, pumpkins, anything in that family. Just as with the daylily, you have that big blossom, you can stuff it with a teaspoon of something sweet or savory, twist the end of it, drop it into a hot pan or bake it. The flowers in the spring, the first flowers are all male blossoms. So those are, they have no function. You may as well eat them. And as the flowers, the female flowers begin to come on, there are still going to be an excess of male flowers. So you can continue to eat those male flowers all summer long. They are very nutritious and they really are tasty. Herbs, lots and lots of edible flowers. There are a few herbs that are not edible. Again, you'll research, but so many of them are. In some cases, the blossoms have more flavor than the leaves that we're accustomed to harvesting. And most cases, they have a little less flavor, but still the herbs are wonderful. And again, if you decide later on that you'd like to get to that, and we have time, I'll be glad to do so. Common edible flowers in your field. We have 3 kinds of blackberries here. All of them have edible flowers. They don't have much of a function. They take over the fields. For goodness sake, eat those blossoms. Do what you can to keep them from reproducing. Daisies, more daisies. Again, the English daisies that are in your yard. There's a picture of the little English daisies. They have a tendency to have pink around them, and they're exceedingly short. They're generally shorter than the mower. Oxeye daisies, by the way, are a Washington State Class C noxious weed, which means that the state would like you to remove them. You don't have to, but they would like you to remove them. So be sure and pull those petals off and use them. And if you find that the oxeye daisy being for sale in your hardware store or Home Depot, I have seen it there. You might just mention to the manager that what he's selling is illegal. Dandelions, an acquired taste. The leaves are pretty bitter. The flowers, not so much. I like to pull off a dandelion when I'm out hiking and just kind of munch on some of those tiny little yellow pebbles. They're almost like a cat or a dog because they have not just the yellow petals, but they have an undercoat. They have little short white fibers right beneath that, which also are edible. They don't have the strong bitter flavor. You can harvest bucketfuls of dandelions and try making your own wine. I've tried that. Yeah, you might want to try it yourself. It wasn't tremendously successful for me. You can take those little yellow fibers and the white fibers beneath them, put them into fritters, put them into pancakes, use them in any way that you choose for cooking. They can handle heat. And if you have nothing else to do and you simply want to gather the seed heads that have blown, the ones that you blow away, you can use those for padding, but it would take, I don't know how many thousands of them to fill a small pillow. Pineapple weed. Pineapple weed is a lot of fun. You'll find that in your gravel driveway or down some dirt path that's heavily trod. Pineapple weed grows where nothing else will. It likes a harsh, really tough environment. The pineapple weed is the one at the bottom corner there. Generally, they do not have petals. Once in a while, you find one with one or two little tiny yellow petals, but they don't generally have flower petals. You want the pineapple weed while it is smaller than what's in the picture. The ones that are in the picture are fun to take when you're hiking and just bite it in half and munch on it for a little bit and then spit it out. But if they are smaller than the ones in the picture, you can use them as a garnish. You can put them in soups or salads. You can dry them for winter tea using them the same way that you would chamomile. Pineapple weed is really delicious. Salal, we can all identify salal. Those lovely little sprays of tiny little blossoms are really decorative. They're completely edible. They make a terrific berry that makes wonderful jelly, but the blossoms are edible. And what I find with salal is that some years you have a lot of blossoms and no berries. Other years you have a lot of blossoms and a lot of berries. So I'm not sure that harvesting them to use as decoration or for edibles is really going to affect your berry crop. You never know whether you have one or not. Salmonberry and thimbleberry, we all know those. They're rampant. Both of those are edible flowers. They are single flowers. You can pinch off the green part at the bottom and just use them. They take up a lot of space. They are hard to kill. Eat the flowers, keep them from reproducing. They are in the rubus family, along with the other berries that we know, the blackberries and boysenberries and all those. Okay, a few resources to get you started. Any good book that has good pictures and good descriptions will help you to identify these plants so that you don't inadvertently eat a lookalike. It's really important to be sure, since we've gotten away from the edible flowers, to be sure that what you're eating is safe. I find that one of the best places to find an identification book for your local flowers and bushes is your state park gift shop. They'll generally have books that deal just with their area, and that's wonderful for identification. Your county extension office may be able to help you, your public library, or perhaps even your own personal book collection. Most books that have been written in the last 20, 30, 50 years do not address the edibility of the blossoms. Most of that information you're going to find online. Some of these sites at the bottom are not by any means the only ones out there. They are the ones that I used to fact check the flowers in this presentation. It's a good way to start, but anything that you find out there, if you check the bibliography, you can consider it to be a valuable source for edibility of flowers. There is one article that's not on there that I found kind of interesting. Back when I was researching the orchard flowers, which have just that tiny bit of cyanide, this one told you how much of each type of flower or seed from those orchard trees you could eat without it being adversely affecting you. That particular article, if you're interested, is called 8 Foods That Could Kill You If You Eat Enough of Them. And that one was originally published in Bon Appetit magazine, which is a well-known magazine. Do not eat the flowers of most of your garden beans, anything in the carrot family. Do not eat anything in the nightshade family. Don't eat the blossoms of rhubarb, and don't eat blossoms of the ornamental sweet peas. So, are there any questions?
Okay, I'm gonna move this back so I can we'll leave that up there, but let's see. Want to hear from you. That was from Sarah. References. Okay, any questions? And you can certainly speak up too. Any questions out there?
Do you want me to go through a few of the flowers that we skipped over?
I think we have a few minutes. Let's do that. So I'm
Okay.
gonna bring it back.
This is back in the common edible flowers in your flower beds.
I have a question on beans.
Here,
If, the beans are edible, but the
Yep.
flowers are not?
not always, not always. And some of those that are coming in from Asia and other continents, you need to be very careful.
Hmm.
Especially some of the footlongs and some of the purple footlongs. Research those before eating them. They're in a different family.
Oh, but what about just pole beans?
Any of our local beans, you should be safe to eat. Broad beans or green beans, you should be safe.
Oh, okay.
I would still research those, but scarlet runners are absolutely safe always.
Okay.
Back in the flower beds, some of the other
I
ones,
had a question because you talked about a lot of different plants, and
Yeah.
I'm new to the area. I don't know what all of those plants look like, and it would be wonderful. I mean, like you talked about a weed that everybody was supposed to know, and I'm going, huh?
I listed a lot of flowers and minimal attention to each one because I was hoping that maybe one or more of these flowers would pique your interest and you could research it and maybe include it in your diet. So many of these flowers, yes, things like pineapple weed, I don't know where you live, but you may not have it available in your area. Some of those you'll just want to go online and research the appearance of and how to identify the plant and where to find it. It may not even be available in your area. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, I just yeah, I took a lot of pictures just so I could look up the names and try and figure out what they were. So I do appreciate that.
And again, too, you can always get a copy of this presentation or a copy of the slides too, and go, okay, I want to go back and look at each different one. So, just let me know.
Okay, that'll be good because I've tried to go and look at some of the slides elsewhere, and they were YouTube things, and I couldn't download the presentation. So we just let you know.
Okay, we're getting a few more questions here. Is it correct that daylilies are okay?
Yes.
Some asterisk lilies are not. Please comment.
I would not eat any lily other than a daylily. It may be called a lily, but it's a different family. Research any lilies. Many of them are poisonous. The old-fashioned Stellidioro daylily, which you can find at your nursery if you're not able to identify it yourself or get it from a neighbor, is absolutely safe.
Okay. Are the flowers of most of our herbs basically edible?
Most of them, yes. Most of
May
them
I just say that our plant sale, there will be Stelladora daylilies there.
Oh, they're so dependable. In the herbs, some of them that are edible flowers are dill, which has more flavor in the flower than it does in the leaf. Fennel, lemon verbena, marjoram, oregano and rosemary, sage, all the lavenders, and all the mint family, chocolates, orange, strawberry, all those mints. Some of those it's difficult because the flowers are small and in among the leaves, it's difficult to pull them off. So just strip the entire shoot, taking the tiny little leaves along with the blossoms and use them. The mint family in particular is used in any kind of a Greek dish, like a Greek salad. That's what Greeks are known for, is the mint family. But any of these other herbs, you can use them, most of them being strong enough to be used in a hot dish. Where many of the flowers that we are only good for cold dishes, they bruise easily or they just flop when you put any heat on them. Any other questions?
So nice to know that I can eat the pear blossoms.
Yeah.
Help cut down on the amount of trees produce. I agree, way too many pears.
But you're not gonna eat a quart of pear blossoms, right? Because of that tiny little bit of cyanide in there.
Could you please repeat the no's?
The nose,
In other words, some of those
Sure.
that you know that you shouldn't be touching.
yes. Do not eat garden beans without researching them. Do not eat anything in the carrot family. Do not eat the blossoms of carrot families. Do not eat any blossoms of the nightshade family, which is potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, and there are a few others. Don't eat the blossoms of the rhubarb. Don't eat any ornamental sweet peas because they're not truly a garden pea. They're a different family, but because they resemble a pea flower, we call them peas.
And can you talk about crystallized blooms?
Sure. Crystallizing blooms is fun. You take, in the olden days, we took a solution, we called it a simple syrup, which was 1 part sugar to 1 part water. So it's quite diluted. You can up the amount of sugar if you'd like, and I generally do. Take and you make it cold. You don't want it hot. Take your blossom, something like a pansy or something that has a little substance to it, perhaps an impatiens flower. Dip it into that sugar water and then set it on a paper towel or on a rack and just let it dry. It will have more of a sweet flavor to it. It may have a tiny bit of an opacity to it. It'll look like it's been coated with something, almost like snow coating your Christmas tree. Completely edible, a lot of fun.